Man gets stood up on a blind date until twin girls burst in screaming, "Help! They're hurting our mom." Marcus Webb had checked his watch 4 times in the past 20 minutes. 7:08 p.m. His date was now 38 minutes late, and the elegant Italian restaurant was beginning to feel less like a romantic setting and more like a crime scene. The crime being his dignity, slowly bleeding out on the polished hardwood floor. His college roommate, Danny, had orchestrated this whole disaster. She's incredible, man. Smart, witty, and she actually reads books. Real ones. You two are meant for each other. Marcus had resisted for weeks. 2 years after his marriage had dissolved in a slow, grinding collapse, the idea of sitting across from a stranger and pretending to be interesting felt about as appealing as oral surgery. But Danny had worn him down. So here he was. New charcoal blazer, fresh haircut, a mental list of conversation topics he'd rehearsed in the bathroom mirror like a lunatic. He'd ordered nothing, just water, which sat sweating in its glass while he sweated in his blazer. His phone buzzed against the white tablecloth. Unknown number. Something came up. Can't make it tonight. Sorry. That was it. No period at the end. No explanation. Just 11 words and a void where his evening used to be. Marcus flagged down the waiter, a young man named Paolo, who had already perfected the sympathetic head tilt that service industry workers reserve for the visibly stood up. "I'll take the check." "Sir, you haven't." "I know. Just the water." Paolo nodded like a man who had seen this before, which he probably had, and retreated to the terminal. Marcus pressed his palms flat on the table and exhaled slowly. He was fine. This was fine. He would go home, change into sweatpants, and eat leftover Thai food directly from the container. A perfect Friday, actually. Better, probably. Then the front doors of the restaurant burst open. 2 small figures stumbled through. Twin girls, identical, maybe 7 years old, their faces contorted with raw terror. One wore a burgundy dress, the other sage green, and both were screaming at a pitch that silenced every conversation in the room simultaneously, the way a thunderclap silences birds. "Help. Please. Someone, they're hurting our mom. Please, somebody help her." The room froze. 40 diners sat suspended mid-bite, mid-sentence, mid-sip, staring at 2 little girls who were trembling so hard they could barely stand. Marcus was already moving. He crossed the restaurant in long strides and dropped to one knee in front of them, putting himself at eye level, his voice low and steady despite the adrenaline already flooding his chest. "Hey, look at me. I'm right here. Tell me what's happening." The girl in burgundy seized his arm with both hands, her small fingers digging in hard. "Back parking lot. 2 men. They knocked her down and they won't stop. Please, please." Before we continue, tell us in the comments what time it is and where you are watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Now let's get back to our story. Marcus stood. He turned to the hostess, a young woman named Claire who was already reaching for the phone with wide eyes. 911 right now. Assault in progress, back parking lot. Tell them to move fast. Then to Paolo, who had materialized behind him. Stay with these girls. Keep them inside no matter what. He was at the back exit before anyone could respond. The rear parking lot was the kind of dark that exists by design, the kind that certain people rely on. A few overhead lights cast weak amber circles on the asphalt, leaving long stretches of shadow between the vehicles. Marcus slowed as he pushed through the heavy door, ears sharpening. He heard her before he saw her. A sharp cry cut off, the muffled sound of a struggle. Then a man's voice, low and vicious. "Last time I'm asking. The necklace. We saw you wearing it. Hand it over, and this stops." "I told you." Her voice was ragged but fierce, like someone refusing to give an inch even as they bled. "I don't know what you think you saw." The sound of a slap cracked through the air. Something ignited in Marcus's chest that he hadn't felt in years. Not anger exactly, but something cleaner and colder than anger. Clarity. He moved around a black SUV, and the scene came into focus. A woman in a midnight blue dress down, on one knee on the pavement, blood at the corner of her mouth. dark hair falling across her face. Two men in dark jackets stood over her. One had her wrist twisted at a punishing angle behind her back. The other was crouched over her scattered handbag, rifling through it with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd done this before. "Hey!" Marcus's shout echoed off the concrete walls. "Get your hands off her. Now!" Both men turned. The one gripping her wrist straightened slowly, a contemptuous smile spreading across his face as he sized Marcus up. "Take a walk, hero. Unless you want to go home in an ambulance." "I've had a really bad night," Marcus said, his voice flat and calm. "You picked the wrong parking lot." He charged. Marcus Webb was not, by any reasonable definition, a fighter. He was an architect who played pickup basketball on Sundays and occasionally ran half marathons when he felt sufficiently guilty about his diet. But he hit the first man-the-way frustration hits a pressure valve completely and all at once, driving him backward into the side of a parked sedan. The impact sent pain screaming through Marcus's shoulder, but also knocked the man's grip loose, and that was enough. The second man came fast, arm swinging. Marcus dropped his head, and the fist sailed past his ear. He grabbed the man's jacket lapels and used his own momentum against him, spinning and slamming him hard into the SUV with a sound like a hammer striking sheet metal. "Run!" Marcus shouted toward the woman. "Get inside, go!" She didn't run. He would think about that later, when everything had settled, the way she didn't run. Instead, she was on her feet in a single motion, and she swung her handbag in a wide, furious arc that connected with the first attacker's temple with a crack that made Marcus wince sympathetically. The man went down to one knee. "Nobody," she said, her voice shaking with something that was not fear but its opposite, "touches my daughters." The sirens hit the air like a physical thing, sharp and close, blue and red light already painting the buildings at the lot's entrance. The two men heard it and made the calculation instantly. The one Marcus had pinned shoved him backward hard enough to send him stumbling against a hood, and then they ran, swallowed by the gap between buildings, footsteps fading fast. Marcus straightened, one hand pressed to his ribs, breathing through his nose. The woman stood a few feet away, chest heaving, the shoulder seam of her dress torn open, ice and fury warring in her expression. "Are you all right?" he managed. She stared at him, and even in the yellow half-light, the impact of her was immediate. Dark eyes, sharp features, the kind of face that remained striking even when bloodied and frightened. "You just," she stopped, "started again. You ran toward them." "Your daughters," Marcus said. "They're inside. They're safe." Something broke open in her face. Her hand went to her mouth. "Sophie, Ava." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Oh God, my girls." The police arrived in a controlled storm. Officers with drawn weapons shouted commands, the organized chaos of a crime scene assembling itself. Marcus and the woman raised their hands simultaneously and sank to their knees on the cold asphalt, a strangely synchronized motion for two people who had never met. Or hadn't they? The next 30 minutes moved in fragments. Statements given. A paramedic pressing carefully along Marcus's ribcage while he sat on the ambulance's rear step, confirming that nothing was broken, just bruised enough to make breathing interesting for the next week. Across the lot, a reunion that made even the officers nearby look away to give it privacy. The woman dropping to her knees and wrapping her arms around two small girls in matching dresses, all three of them shaking. A detective named Vasquez approached Marcus with a notepad and a measuring look. "That was either very brave or very reckless, Mr. Webb." "Felt like neither in the moment," Marcus said honestly. "These two have been working this neighborhood for a month, targeting women wearing expensive jewelry." Vasquez paused. "You're the first person who intervened." He glanced across the lot. "The woman, her name is Serena Morrison. She'd like to speak with you when you're ready." Marcus went still. "Serena Morrison." Vasquez checked his notes. "That's right. We were." Marcus started laughing before he could stop himself, then made a sound that was considerably less dignified as his ribs registered their objection. "We were supposed to have a blind date tonight. Here. Detective Vasquez stared at him for a long moment. You're kidding. I genuinely wish I was. Vasquez shook his head slowly. I've been doing this job for 18 years, he said. That might be the first time I've ever felt sorry for someone who just stopped a mugging. Serena was sitting at a corner table when Marcus walked back into the restaurant, ice pack at her lip, daughters bookending her like small, identical sentinels, all three of them still wearing the residue of tears. She looked up when he approached, and the recognition hit her face like a current. Ethan, she said, then immediately corrected herself. Marcus? You're Marcus Webb? Guilty, he said, easing into the chair across from her with the careful movements of a man whose ribs had opinions. Blind date. Sorry, I didn't lead with that in the parking lot. Serena made a sound that was half laugh, half sob, and pressed the ice pack harder against her lip. I stood you up, she said. I actually stood you up. You were a little occupied. Mommy. The girl in the sage dress, Ava, was looking between them with the uncomplicated interest of a child who processes information faster than adults. You know him. We were supposed to meet tonight. Serena shook her head, still slightly disbelieving. Before all of this, Sophie, in burgundy, studied Marcus with large, serious eyes. You're the one who helped her. Your mom helped herself, Marcus said. That swing at the end was all her. Sophie considered this, then nodded as though he had passed some private evaluation, and reached over to take his hand with the frank confidence of a 7-year-old who has decided. You can stay, she announced. They ordered dinner. Pasta for the adults, spaghetti with extra Parmesan for the twins, and ice cream for everyone, which was the least the evening owed them all. Over the meal, Serena explained. She'd been running late, had stopped to confirm the reservation earlier in the evening, and the men had noticed the antique necklace, her grandmother's, worn for good luck on occasions that mattered. Did it work? Marcus asked carefully. She looked at him across the table. I got attacked, traumatized my children, and ruined a good dress. A pause, but maybe the jury's still out. When the car arrived to take them home, they stood outside on the sidewalk in the cooling night air, the girls drowsy and leaning against their mother. I'd like to see you again, Marcus said. Somewhere considerably more boring. Fair warning, Serena said. My life is chaotic on a normal night. 2 kids, demanding career, I can't parallel park, I have opinions about science fiction that most people find exhausting. Architect, Marcus said. I argue about fonts. We all have our damage. Serena smiled, really smiled for the first time, and it was worth the bruised ribs. They like you, she said quietly, glancing at the girls. I got the feeling Sophie was deciding that in the parking lot, he said. She was. Serena tilted her head. She's usually a tough sell. 3 months later, Marcus sat in the same restaurant, at the same table where he'd once sat alone with a glass of water and a quiet, spreading loneliness. He wore a navy suit this time. No torn blazer. Across from him, Serena wore a dress the color of deep water, her lip long-heeled, her grandmother's necklace, recovered by the police 2 weeks after the attack, resting at her collarbone. Sophie and Ava sat at the adjacent table with Marcus's parents, engaged in the transparent theater of children pretending not to watch something they are absolutely watching. Marcus reached into his pocket. His hands, he noted, were not entirely steady. Serena. She reached across the table and covered his hands with hers. Yes, she said. I haven't asked yet. Yes, she said again, and her eyes were bright. Whatever it is. He opened the ring box, a simple diamond set in platinum, and beside it, threaded through a delicate chain, her grandmother's necklace. Marry me. Yes, she said for the 3rd time, which was exactly enough. From the next table, Sophie and Ava erupted. The restaurant followed a half-second later, the whole room rising into applause as Marcus slid the ring onto Serena's finger, and she pressed her forehead to his and laughed and cried at the same time, which is what happens when relief and joy arrive together. Best blind date ever, she whispered. Best night of my life, Marcus said. And it started terribly. She pulled back just enough to look at him. "No," she said softly. "It started exactly right." The worst nights sometimes build the best lives. When everything falls apart at once, the only question worth asking is who chooses to stand beside you in the chaos. That's where love actually begins, not in the perfect moments, but in the ones that test you, and in the people who run toward you anyway. If this story moved you, hit the like button and subscribe for more incredible true stories. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Thanks for watching.